Hey everyone, it's Smitha. Today I'm super excited because I'm going to be telling you all about a collaboration palette that I am doing with Cloudicos. And Cloudicos is an Australian indie brand. They are a brand that I've talked about on my channel many times before, and it's owned and run by one woman named Amy. Cloudicos is particularly known for their sparkly makeup products, and that's how I discovered them several years ago. I was a customer before anything else, before I started receiving PR or anything. And one of my favorite products that I know I've talked about on my channel many times before is their pocket palettes. They actually have 4 of these, one for each season. And well over a year ago, Amy, the owner, actually asked me if I wanted to design my own pocket palette. The goal of this palette was to bring something unique to the Cloudicos lineup. The concept that I came up with is Black Opal, and my inspiration behind this was that I wanted to bring some richer, deeper, moodier jewel tones that, aren't really in the pocket palettes that have been created so far. And I picked Black Opal because the stone is also known to be native to Australia. So I thought this would be a nice way of bringing these tones to the lineup, and also referencing the fact that this is an Australian makeup brand. The palette has the exact same type of setup as the seasonal pocket palettes, but the shades are all unique and based around this theme of Black Opal. This palette will be launching on July 8th, and it is limited edition. What I'm going to do in this video is show you some detailed hand swatches, eye swatches, and several looks. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments. It will be retailing for, I believe, between 61 and 62 US dollars, but I will have all of the details in the description box. I just want to say thank you so much for the support. It has really meant so much to me, and it's just so much fun to be able to create something with a brand that I've really come to know and love over the past many years. Regardless of if you intend to pick up this palette or not, I just want to say thank you so much for the support. It truly means so much to me. For my looks, I'm going to focus on doing all shimmer looks. However, one of the things I really love about this palette is that it can be used as one and done shades, or it can be used as a companion palette. I feel like there's just so many different things that you can do with it and a really nice assortment of shades. Alright, and for this portion of the video, I am of course going to do some detailed hand swatches and eye swatches, my favorite thing to be able to provide for you. Let me also just repeat the most important things about the launch. The palette will be launching on July 7th at 3 p.m. Pacific time, which is the equivalent of 8 a.m. on July 8th Sydney time. The palette is limited edition, is going to be retailing for approximately 61 US dollars. That's 89 Australian dollars. It's not affiliate code eligible. However, I do have a unique affiliate code during the launch of my palette that you can use to save on anything else on the Cloudicos website, so make sure you stack it. If the palette does sell out, we will be letting you know as soon as possible about restock information. I don't have that specific information at this time, but I know that my hope and Cloudicos' hope is that everyone who would like to purchase the palette hopefully has the opportunity to do so. Cloudicos is a small brand owned and run by one person, but they've been working so incredibly hard and are so excited about this launch. Alright, the first shade we have is called Lightning Ridge, and I have a feeling already that this shade is going to be a crowd favorite. It's this gorgeous fiery toned shade that kind of has an orangey red base, maybe a little bit more orange than red, and it has a strong yellow shift. This is also one of the shadows I think makes for a beautiful highlighting shade, or even a face highlight if you use a light hand. Having a few shades like this that were so versatile was really important to me. And this is one of the shades that is sort of unassuming in the pan, but when you see it swatched, it just transforms. The next shade in the palette we have is called Fiery. This is a red shimmer. Red shimmers are very hard to do, and I have to say I was really happy with how this one turned out. To me, this is a true red, and I'm really happy that we were able to include this shade in the palette. It also is, of course, an important shade that you see in a Black Opal. All right, and the next shade we have is called Rare. This is what I would describe as a semi-sheer blue-purple. It's one of those shades that, because it is semi-sheer, looks super glowy on the skin and makes for a beautiful highlighting shade as well. It has a pretty smooth texture to it, and again, I just love shades like these. I've actually made a whole video on blue-purple duochromes, so of course I had to include my own in the palette. All right, the next shade we have is called Diffract, and this one I also feel like is going to be another crowd favorite. It's another one of those shades that looks almost a little bit unassuming in the pan, but when you swatch it, the strong chrome shift in it is just so special. It's what I would describe as having almost like a green-yellow base with a yellow leaning shift. Definitely has a little bit of pink in the shift as well. This shade just looks electric on the skin. Next, we have the shade Opalescent, and this one I would describe almost as an icy blue-brown duochrome. It has a little bit of coolness to it, but not too much. And this is another shade in the palette that is semi-sheer that I think works really beautifully as a highlighting shade. On the inner corner, even on the cheeks, especially if you have a medium to deeper skin tone. I'm a blue lover, so of course this is personally one of my favorite shades in the palette. Next shade we have is called Elusive, and this I would describe as a grungy jewel-toned green. And it shifts between different tones of lighter and deeper grungy greens. Also has a hint of gold in there as well. I do love that there are several options in here for the green lovers, and I also do love that all the greens are quite different from one another. The next shade we have is called Precious. When I thought about the concept for this palette, I knew immediately that this shade had to be in there. Like, it's probably the first shade that I knew had to be in there. I love a royal blue, what can I say? And this is a beautiful royal blue, and I'll always love the way that this tone of blue really pops on brown skin. I also just feel like it contrasts so well with some of the other shimmers in the palette, especially Opalescent and Lightning Ridge. Now we have Enigmatic, and this shade I would describe as this really deep, grungy teal tone shade. I have to say I really like the way that this shade came out and that we could include it in the palette. Not only is it of course a shade that you see in Black Opal, but it's also just such a rare shimmer shade. This to me is one of the more unique tones of green that I've seen for a shimmer. I would say that you do get a little bit of a duochrome effect with this shade. To my eye, it's kind of like a teal grungy brown duochrome shift. Alright, and last but not least is the shade Opal Queen, named after what some people call is Black Opal, the queen of the opals. This is another shade I knew we had to include in the palette because I had to have a shade that was nearly black, that could be used to smoke out a variety of looks, to layer some of those more sheer shimmers over top of it. And also the shadow is kind of a vibe as a one and done shade. It's almost what I would describe as a blackened olive. It has a very subtle kind of reddish shift to it that you can pick up in the mirror. And you can also see some of those red leaning sparkles up close. Here's what all of the shades in the palette look like swatched to my arm. I so hope that seeing these detailed swatches was helpful. Let's go ahead and get into some looks. All right, for my first look, I think I want to use some of these deeper shades in the last row to do a halo eye. I'm going to start off with this blue tone shade here called Precious. I have primed my lids with the Danessa Myricks Color Fix in Color Fix Nudes. I'm just going to pick up that shade on a brush. I'm going to start to create a shape. The texture of the shimmer is smooth, so I have a good control over the placement of it. And I knew I had to include several blues in the palette because, as I've mentioned, blue is definitely my own personal favorite eyeshadow shade. Now I'm going to go ahead and add this on the outer corner as well. And just wing that out ever so slightly, leaving the center of the lid bare for another shimmer. Then on that same brush, I'm going to add that same shade along the lower lash line in the same areas where I added it to the lid. All right, this is where we're at so far. Having a lot of trouble deciding which shimmer I want to use on the center of the lid, but I think I'm going to go in with a Lightning Ridge, which is this gorgeous kind of fiery toned orange shade. Here is what it looks like on my fingertip. I just feel like that is really going to contrast well and pop against that richer jewel toned blue. Yeah, that is so pretty. I feel like this shade, Lightning Ridge, is going to be such a favorite. All right, now I'm going to just take a little bit on my brush and add it to the center of the lower lash line. And I think I'm just going to finish up this look with one more shade. I'm going to use this center shade, Opalescent, which is sort of like a sheer blue. I intended this to be able to be used as an iridescent. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the brow bone. I also really like using this shade as a highlighter on the face. None of the shades in here are white based, which, you know, is nice if you, I mean, really for anyone, but if you are a person of color, you won't have a white cast with any of the shades. So adding that to the inner corner. And then just adding a little bit outside of that rich blue shade to just kind of fade out into the opalescent shimmer. Now I'm just going to start finishing off the look. I'm going to use this liner from Urban Decay. This is a cobalt blue and the shade is called Chaos. I'm just adding that to the waterline. I add mascara and here is my first completed look. For my second look, I was inspired by this look by Frankie Darling, so let me show you how I created it. All right, now for my second look, I want to do something that is a little bit more graphic. I'm going to start off with this gorgeous shade Opal Queen. It's like deep grungy, almost black, but it has some red in there, a little bit of green shift as well, and it has quite a smooth texture, which in my opinion makes it easier to manipulate to create shapes. So I have this smaller brush from Glaminatrix. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of product on my brush and place it kind of in this inner crease area. Just sweep that up. I'm going to take like a thinner brush after I put down some product just to make it a little bit finer at the edge up here. I think that having this shade in the palette is incredibly useful. You can use it to like smoke out a look as a base for some of the other shimmers all on its own, of course, and I just think that this in particular is a very useful shade. I'm probably going to go back in and intensify that a little bit, but I'm going to take a smaller or thinner brush just to create a more fine tipped line at the end here. All right, I'm pretty happy with that so far. Now I'm going to go ahead and take that same shade and create a wing with that shadow. Just pretty much from the middle portion of the lid out. And connecting it to the lower lash line. And then I'm just sharpening that wing up with the smallest amount of concealer. I may go over this with a black liner at the end just to intensify things, but I'm pretty happy with that so far. All right, and now I want to play around with the greens in here because I think they are so special. I'm going to start off with this deep teal toned shade here. It's called Enigmatic. Here's what it looks like on my fingertip. And I'm just going to place that with my finger on the inner portion of the lid. I feel like this one, you could use a brush if that's your preference, but I'm not trying to be overly precise, so I think this is okay. All right, next shimmer I'm going to go into is Elusive. It's this jewel toned grungy green. Here's what it looks like on my fingertip and swatched in the back of my hand. This one has a beautiful kind of like grungy yellow orange shift to it. I'm just going to blend that into that first teal shimmer Enigmatic. All right, and last but not least, I'm going to use this third green called Diffract, which is probably my favorite green in the palette because it's shifty, it's so ethereal. Here is what it looks like swatched on the back of my hand. I kind of did like a dark to light gradient here. And just work that outward. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do is take this Victoria Beckham Satin Kajal eyeliner and just go over that wing a tiny bit to intensify it. And then just adding a little bit of that same liner on the inner portion as well. And here is my second completed look. All right, and for my third look, I think I want to do something oil slicky. I want to start off with this deeper shade. This is Opal Queen, and put it in the outer portion of the lid. I'm also going to try just to use some of those shimmers that I haven't yet. I'm just picking this shade up with a slightly fluffier brush. And I'm not having any issues with that. Like I said, it has a smoother texture, so I do feel like you have a little bit more manipulation over it. There's a few shimmers that I haven't gotten to use yet. And with an oil slick eye, I feel like that's a perfect opportunity to use a bunch of shimmers in one look. If you wanted to, you could totally put the shade all over the lid and just layer the shimmers on top of it for that oil slick effect. And it doesn't have to be perfect because, again, we're going to be layering shimmers on top. I'm going to take a little bit and connect that to the lower lash line as well. All right, I'm pretty happy with that so far. I am now debating which shimmers I want to go into first. I haven't used this red and I'm really excited about it. I do think that this is a shade that a lot of people are going to enjoy. It's just a good old red shimmer. And I do feel like, you know, it hits that red tone pretty well. Reds are hard to do well. Here is what it looks like on my fingertip. Just going to go ahead and put a little bit on the inner portion there. I do want to fit like a bunch of shades, so I don't want to go too crazy with that, but I think that looks good. I did pick up a little bit on my brush as well, just to really get into the areas that I can't reach well with my fingertip. All right, next shade I want to go into is this gorgeous orange tone shade. This is called Lightning Ridge, and I used it for my first look as well, and I'm just going to blend that in to that red toned shimmer. And this shade does have a fiery tone shift, so I think it's perfect for going right next to that red shimmer. All right, let's go into some of these deeper tones as well. I want to use this teal. This is the shade Enigmatic. Here's what it looks like on my fingertip. And I'm just going to blend that into the orange. All right, and now I'm going to go into the shade Precious, which is this really, really pretty deep jewel toned blue. And just blend that into that teal. I think that looks really cool. I want to use as my highlighting shade this same shade Lightning Ridge. Because I do, like I mentioned before, I do think that this is one of those shades that works well both on the lid, but then sheared out is a pretty highlighting shade as well. Just put a little bit under the brow bone. Pick up a little bit on a brush and put that onto the lower lash line as well. And for my liner, I'm going to use the Victoria Beckham Kajal eyeliner, and this is the black sparkly one. The shade is Night Flash. These glide right on. Like, they don't last the best in my waterline, but they are a joy to use. And they do work really well as a wing too. So just added a little bit to the waterline. I'm going to just do a little bit of a small wing. And here is the third completed look. All right, and typically this is where I would do my wrap-up thoughts if I was doing a typical makeup review, but since I'm talking about something that I helped to create, I just want to say thank you so much. I know that not everyone is going to be in the market for an eyeshadow palette or drawn to this particular palette. However, it really does mean so much to me just you being here, watching the video, liking it, subscribing to me. If you do want to pick this palette up, I truly hope that you are able to do so. Even though it's limited edition, I do have a feeling that there will be some type of restock or ability to pre-order that if there is demand for it. I personally am so happy with how this turned out. I've been such a huge fan of these pocket eyeshadow palettes for years. I love to use them regularly and to really travel with them. And I truly think that you can get so much use out of this little palette. I also just feel like there's so many looks that you can make with this palette in particular. For my looks, I focused on just using this palette, but because it's an all shimmer palette, of course it makes for a beautiful companion palette and a one and done palette as well. My goal in helping to create this palette was to make something that was very unique to the Cloudicos lineup, especially because there aren't a lot of like deeper, grungier tones, and I wanted to make something that not only worked for lighter skin tones, but definitely really worked for medium to deeper skin tones, like every single shade in the palette. That is always my goal if I have the opportunity to contribute to a makeup product. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. If you made it to the end of the video, please leave me a black heart, especially because we have some deeper, grungier tones in this palette. As always, I really hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.